work hard, you show up, you deliver. And yet you're still being passed over, ignored, and talked past. And what's the most frustrating part? You can't put your finger on why.
It's not about changing who you are. It's about expanding the skills you already have. The best way to build credibility is showing people how you handle difficult situations. Don't take no as case closed. Take no as a redirect. Because someone is quiet, it doesn't mean they're not engaged or that they don't want to do it. It just might be the values that they were taught.
Welcome to In Confidence, where what we share in confidence helps us grow in confidence. This season is all about problem solution. We asked you to give us your top problems you want us to solve, and each episode we're going to solve that problem, or at least give you some tips on how to think about it. Here's what I've come to understand. Being overlooked at work rarely has anything to do with your talent or your output. It's all about how you're being perceived. And perception is something that we can shape and change. Today, I'm calling in a friend who is the expert on solving this problem. She's made it her life's work to help others navigate it. Jessica Chen is an Emmy Award-winning journalist, the founder and CEO of Soulcast Media, and the author of Smart Not Loud, How to Get Noticed at Work for All the Right Reasons. She's taught over 2 million people how to communicate with confidence, and today she's bringing that expertise here to GRAVITAS. Welcome, Jessica, to the show. Jessica, welcome to In Confidence.
Thank you so much for having me.
We were just saying in the green room, how have we not met?
I don't know, but the universe was going to make sure we met at some point.
I know, and I'm Chinese, so we always have this idea of like 缘分, like destiny, like 我们有缘. So I'm really happy that this season brought us together.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm honored to be here with you.
Yay. Well, let's get started. Our signature question that we ask everyone is, what are you proudest of from the last 12 months of your life?
Ooh. Okay. So I'm going to say it's slightly over 12 months just because I had my second kid and she just turned 1. So just hit the 12-month mark. I have a daughter. So I have an older son. He's 4 years old. And I just had my daughter who just turned 1. And that's something obviously I'm so proud of and very grateful for too.
So you only have single-digit family members in your home other than you and your husband currently?
Correct. Yes.
Bow down to you like that. You should be proud of that. I'm proud of you for having 2 under the age of 10.
Totally. I mean, we only have 1 in diapers now. So, we're getting there. But, it's such a joy at this age. And of course, it's like busy for, any of the parents who are listening to this. Obviously, it's very busy, but it's like good busy, right? You're just seeing the joy in having young kids. So.
Oh, I love that. And before we dive into today's topic, we always say your life story is your leadership story. So can you give us a sense of how you make a difference in the world and a couple of the life moments that you can highlight for our audience in terms of why I asked you to come and solve a problem with us today?
Yeah. So, gosh, it's like, where do I start? But I'll keep it brief. So my career started out in journalism. So I was a journalist for about 10 years. I'm here in the US, so working for all the big networks, of NBC, ABC. And after winning an Emmy Award at ABC, I was like, you know what? I'm leaving. And everybody was like, what are you talking about, Jessica? And I said, yeah, I'm leaving because I'm actually so passionate about teaching people how to become better communicators. And people said, like, why is that? And the truth is, when I started working, and this is, of course, when I was like 21 years old, I was terrible at communications. I'm more introverted by nature, but I often found myself early on in my career feeling very stuck, feeling overlooked, overshadowed, right? And I looked around and I was like, gosh, the people who are really good at getting those opportunities, they're actually really good communicators. They know how to position themselves. And I always say, starting out my career in journalism ended up being the best masterclass in many ways because you are learning how to be a good communicator on the spot, that I wanted to go out and teach people this. So long story short, I've now taught over 2 million people now how to become better communicators. It's crazy. And it's growing by the month, really. And I have a book, Smart Not Loud, How to Get Noticed at Work for All the Right Reasons. I teach at Columbia and all the good stuff. So I'm really, really proud of this. I'm so grateful for the journalism background because it did really set me up for what I do today.
Perfection. You can tell that this is what you teach. And it's so interesting. We've never met in person. And there was not even a warm intro between us. You are so well known for this that we somehow were connected on LinkedIn, and I follow you. I read all your content. I read your book. And all of a sudden, when the season's idea came around solving problems, I think I cold emailed you, right? I DM'd you. I'm like, you don't know me. I'd love for you to come solve a problem. And you said, of course, I would love to do that. Like, who says yes to someone they've never actually met?
You know, I always say, like, the universe just really brings together like-minded men and women together. And I mean, Lisa, you're doing amazing work too. So I'm honored to be able to be doing this with you.
Oh, well, thank you. And you said something in your life story, which is really relevant to the question we're going to answer today, which is you used to be an introvert and then you ended up
an introvert.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Tell me what that means in the context of the work you do.
So let's back up a little bit. So I want to share a story real quick because I think it really highlights the why behind the work. So I mentioned that I started out in journalism. So my first job was at the NBC station in a very small town called Reno, Nevada. And I don't know, I'm sure people have heard of it, so it's not so small, but it is a small town. And I remember, and this is the story. So every morning, and when you work in journalism, you might be familiar with this, Lisa, but reporters, producers, we come together and we basically talk about what's going to be on the news that night. This happens in every single newsroom across the country and I imagine around the world. So one day my manager comes in and he goes, okay, everybody, the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds, they're going to come into our town, and as part of their media campaign, they're going to let one reporter fly with them. Who wants to do it? Would you raise your hand? Yeah.
I would.
Yeah, and you should, because I did too, right? Because I'm like, what a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Thunderbirds, they basically are an air demonstration squadron. So they go from city to city, they put on these like air shows, and okay, you get to fly with them. How cool is that, right? Okay, so I courageously, at 21 years old, like raised my hand in my meeting, and then my manager was like, all right, Jessica, you want to do it? We'll get you a media pass. No problem. Okay. This was like 2 weeks before this was going to actually happen. So I'm telling all my friends and my family, like, I'm going to be able to fly with the Thunderbirds. Okay. The day before the air show's happening, we are once again sitting in our meeting. My manager goes, okay, the Thunderbirds happening tomorrow. Bella, you get to do the story.
What happened?
That's what I was saying. What happened, right? Now, being the quiet introvert and more shy and soft-spoken person that I was as well, I kind of just like sat there. I probably had this like very confused look. My manager just kind of went on with the meeting like nothing weird happened. Now, it bothered me so much that I was like, I have to figure this out. I walked up to him courageously and I was like, hey, just wondering, very nice. Like, why is Bella doing the story? I mentioned I was interested. Let me tell you what he told me. My manager looks at me and he goes, oh my God, Jessica, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot you mentioned you wanted to do it. It was that Bella, she kept talking about it and she was top of mind.
What?
Those words. Top of mind.
Oh,
this changed
man.
everything for me. So don't feel too bad for me. I mean, yes, I didn't get to do it, but this was the catalyst in my career that propelled me to answer the question, why didn't I speak up more? Why didn't I follow up? Why did I just assume saying and asking for what I want once would be enough? So that's the beginning of my journey.
Okay, and this is perfect because we're going to talk about being overlooked or underestimated or passed over at work. The question that was asked of us in our survey was, what do I do if I feel overlooked or underestimated at work and keep getting passed over for opportunities? And I guess the first question is, and you just answered it, have you experienced this? The answer would be yes. I'm going to answer that for you as the extrovert in this couple. What do you do about it? Why is this happening? What's, you write about quiet culture, loud culture. Like, what is going on that this was one of our top rated questions? Like literally everyone's like, yes, that's happening to me.
Yep.
Why is it?
So if this is something that, folks are going through right now, like the first thing that I want to say right now is you're not doing anything wrong. Like you're not doing anything wrong. And the second thing I'm going to say is you don't need to change yourself to fit in. Okay? And I will say everything that I teach, everything that I talk about today are things that I do and use and learned myself. So how does one go about this? So first of all, I do want to acknowledge how painfully difficult it is to be overlooked and overshadowed, right? You know, I just shared my story earlier. And even though I basically condensed that whole experience into like a 30-second story, it was painful. Like, you know, me wondering like, what the heck happened? What's wrong with me? Like, why can't I be like them? Right? You kind of have this like narrative in your head where, what are you doing? You're basically like self-sabotaging yourself, right? But what I realize is it's not about changing who you are. It's about expanding the skills you already have. Okay. So this is where it comes down to communications. Now, some people are like, I'm a naturally very good communicator. Some people may be like, I'm not a good communicator, right? But what I will say is wherever you feel like you are on the spectrum right now, communications is a skill. And it's a skill that you can always get better at. So if I feel like right now I'm at like a 2 out of 10, I can deliberately practice. And there's a lot of things that I teach and what I write about in my book about how you can do this. But the amazing thing about communications is once you think about it as a skill you can improve, you go from a 2 to a 3 and a 3 to a 4 and beyond, right? And so that's like kind of the one thing to set the foundation. You don't have to change who you are. You just have to expand the skills and really think about communications, which then go into visibility and influence, which is all part of this topic.
Okay. And one of the things you mentioned is, and maybe this is, I like a permission slip not to feel bad. One of my favorite parts of your book is around quiet culture versus loud culture. Can you double click into this? Because I think that does give people an acknowledgement that it's not just me, it's everyone who sits in my bucket of feeling overlooked or underestimated. There's actually something bigger happening. I can do something about it, but there's something bigger happening.
Yeah, and thank you for asking because this is a signature framework of why I wrote the book Smart Not Loud. Okay, so I'm going to describe what it means to embody quiet culture traits. So quiet culture traits are things like, let's say you were taught by your parents to listen more than speak. Okay. You were taught to put your head down, work hard, not make waves. You were taught to not talk about yourself and not boast and be humble. And you were taught to generally try to avoid conflict, avoid problems so you can create a harmonious environment, right? I call these quiet culture traits. And if this resonates with you, chances are you might have been raised in a quiet culture household. So I make the argument as well, in many Asian households, that's also what we were taught. Like that's what I was taught. So in writing this book, I realized though, what's actually needed to succeed in the workplace are not necessarily quiet culture traits. It's being able to also embody what I call loud culture traits. And loud culture traits are things like being able to speak your mind and say it with conviction. Being able to go out and network and socialize and connect with people, not just put your head down and do work, right? It's also thinking about, well, if you are doing great work, which you are, how do you talk about it, but do it in a very tactful way. And when it comes to problems, right, it's not about avoiding problems. It's about how do you handle it with tact? Because what I have discovered is we all know problems are going to happen. But the best way to build credibility is showing people how you handle difficult situations, right? That is actually a great way to build credibility. So in my book, I basically create this like paradox where, gosh, like quiet culture, loud culture, but how do you find this balance? And we can talk about that later, but there is a balance. And that middle ground is really kind of like the golden nugget, if you can call it that, of building that visibility so you get the recognition you deserve.
Oh, I love this. And I love this because it means that there's room for all of us. So let's say I am more of a quiet culture person and I now feel really invisible at work because I'm working in a loud culture place at work. And I'm just really frustrated. I'm overlooked. I'm underestimated. Where do you start with someone who's in that situation? Like, what's the start of the advice you're giving them?
Yeah. Let's start with communications, okay? Because that's actually what I love to talk about. So when you think about communications, do you tend to be on the quieter side or do you tend to be on the louder side? So this is my argument. It's not about being quiet if you're loud or loud if you're quiet. It's about when it comes to communicating, thinking about this one thing. Who's my audience and what do they care about? That's it. Asking yourself that question before your next meeting. Who's in this meeting? What do they need to know? And this reframe is so powerful because you're no longer in your head of like, should I say something? Should I not say something? Or if you tend to be more on the loud culture side, sometimes right? Like sometimes you can just talk, but is it resonating too? So this reframe is so powerful because if you can ask yourself this question, who am I talking to and what do they care about? I guarantee any meeting you go into, instantly, you're going to build credibility because you are speaking their language.
So that requires some preparation. Like I can't just walk cold into a meeting anymore. If I feel like I'm not being heard or overlooked or not contributing, I actually have to do my homework before I walk into that meeting.
You do your homework, but it's not a heavy lift. And that's not what I'm saying. It has to be like a whole 20-minute preparation. And sometimes it really can be a simple, before I dial into that next Zoom call, just being like, okay, again, who's in this meeting? What do they care about? Boom, sign in.
Okay. So just having that mindset in your mind so that you can contribute.
Exactly.
What else am I doing if I'm in your quiet culture bucket?
Okay. This is also one of my favorite ones. So for me, and for a lot of smart people that I work with, we tend to wish or hope that our work will speak for itself. You're doing good work. You're smart. That's enough, right? I always say that's 50% of it. Of course you have to do good work. Of course you have to hit your deadlines. But in many ways, that's status quo. You were hired to do good work. You were hired to be an amazing rock star. But the other half of it is building visibility behind the work. And that's something that I think a lot of us weren't taught. So it's thinking about things like this, advocating for yourself, asking for what you want, right? Now, again, a lot of people who are really smart, they tend to overthink things too. Like, oh, but, I'm not going to say that thing because people must know this already. I always say, you might not think it's valuable. You might think people already know this, but actually you speaking up in a meeting, not necessarily you saying something new, but you asking a question, you validating, you acknowledging, that's actually you getting your voice heard. And do you remember that story where I learned top of mind? That is part of being top of mind. Here's another anecdote that I want people to think about. Imagine a glass jar that's sitting on your desk right now, okay? Every time you're doing good work, a coin drops into that glass jar. Now, after a period of time, that jar is going to fill up. A smart way to show up is cashing in that glass jar. Now that you have proof, now that you have all these coins, what is something that you want to ask for? Because you already have all this credibility and proof. Use it. That's important.
What's an example of that? Can you tell us, of the 2 million learners that you have, has someone shared a story with you where they've cashed in their piggy bank?
Yes, I have a great story. So actually just a few weeks ago, I was actually working with one of our clients, and this happened because, she was feeling really frustrated because she had a recent performance review. Okay. Performance review season. And she was telling me that she was initially kind of bummed because what she was hoping to get, which was to do this one project, she didn't get to do. And her manager, kind of poo-pooed the idea, was like, oh, not now, basically dismissing her. Okay. And then so when we met, we were talking about that because obviously it really hurt her. She was really disappointed in herself. So one of the things I talked to her about was, okay, well, are you doing good work? She was like, yeah, of course I'm doing good work, right? And I was like, are you hitting your deadlines? Of course I'm hitting my deadlines. And I said, but are you making sure your managers know about the impact you're making? How are you connecting the dots between what you're assigned to do and the impact you're making, right? You have to create that connection. And so with her, I started to build that connection with her. And then I said, okay, I know you just had your performance review. Your manager gave you kind of not so happy news, but wait about a month. After time has passed, now that we've built basically this credibility jar where we basically took out all the things that you did, we lined them up perfectly, you now go into a one-on-one meeting with him and you lay it all out. I'm doing 1, 2, 3, and the impact is A, B, and C. And what it is that you want, now you make the ask. Here's another thing. I want to talk about following up because I think for your audience, learning how to follow up is also really important too, because your audience might feel like, okay, I have this conviction. I'm gonna ask. And then they get told no, which can happen. A few things. Don't take no as case closed, and don't take no personally. Take no as a redirect. It didn't happen this time, but how can I approach it again next time? It's seriously the same conversation I had with my client, and I want people to know that.
I love that because it's like a negotiation, right? Like if they say no, you can say, so what do I have to do for this to be a yes next time? You know, and if I don't want to wait until I have the jar full, how do I breadcrumb along the way? Because like when I was a McKinsey analyst, I would often be like, what's one thing I could do better? And then I'd go back to that person and be like, hey, I did that one thing. What's the next one? Like it was sort of like this, I called it like trapping people into being my mentor. You know, how can someone breadcrumb it without having to set up the one-on-one?
Yeah. Okay, here's actually one of my favorite tips. And I actually wrote an article about this on CNBC. It actually did really well because I think it's something so simple. So what you all need to do right now is create what I call a yay folder. Like go into your inbox and create a folder and label it your yay folder, where anytime somebody says, great job, good work, congratulations, drag that email into your yay folder because that effectively becomes the one place where you are collecting evidence of all your amazing work. That's it.
I love that. And do I forward one every once in a while to my boss or do I just mention it casually?
Great question. So now that you have this Rolodex of amazing emails that you can use as your arsenal, yes, if you get an email from like a client and let's say your manager is not on that email, forward that email and just be like a quick like, hey, FYI, really happy to see this. Not that you're expecting a response, but you're just getting into their consciousness to be top of mind.
Yeah, I do that sometimes with my speakers bureau, FYI. If like someone's like, oh, she was great in our keynote on LinkedIn, I'll be like, look at all the screenshots of how awesome I am. Okay, take note. Now, what's a common mistake people make when they're trying to get more recognition?
Feeling like they did enough.
Ooh, okay, say more about that.
It kind of goes back to what I say, how like sometimes people assume if I ask once, it's enough, or if I say it once, it's enough. I think there was like some research that said that you need to say something like 7 times for it to stick, right? You might have seen that study before. And it's true. But then people are like, well, that's going to be kind of annoying. Like if I'm just like constantly talking about the thing that I want like 7 different times. So this is where you have to get strategic, right? This is where you have to think about, well, what are other ways I can talk about this? What are other angles I can go about this? What are other ways that I can still highlight what I'm doing? And maybe it might not even come from me, right? You know, it doesn't necessarily even have to come from your own voice. It can be from like other people saying something. It could be you using another platform, right? It can be you writing something. But the idea is, you know, if we're talking about visibility and not being overlooked, is thinking that just raising your hand once is enough or saying that one thing is enough. Oftentimes you have to do it many, many times because consistency is key.
I love that. And it comes back. I was going to say, like, as I hear you talking, I have like these personalized, customizable mugs ideas. I was like, from Jessica Chen, I'm going to have a mug that says stay top of mind. Right? It's just gonna like.
Can you imagine that mug?
Yeah, I think we should make that for you. By the way, stay top of mind.
Please do.
Have a yay folder because then you're like you have basically a place you're storing all those things. And then I love the like who's going to be in the meeting, what do they want, right? Just kind of. If I don't want to be overlooked or underestimated, stay top of mind. Have that yay folder. Who's there? What do they want? I feel like those are some pretty simple things people could do today.
But I always say, like, building visibility isn't rocket science in that sense, right? Like, these are things that I think just hearing somebody, like whether it's me or, you know, anybody else, like hearing this, sometimes that's all you need to get that push, that reminder. And if after hearing this, you know, interview, you go or somebody goes and forwards an email to their manager, that's a win for me because you heard this. You're like, what can I push and forward? You doing that? That's it.
And it's the small things, right, that register in your colleague's mind, whether it's your peers or your boss. It's like tiny little things that we probably don't even see that unconsciously make us think. It's the Bella example. I'm still going to use the Thunderbirds and Bella. She kept talking about it.
Yes.
I want to close out with another thought. And this is kind of what I've been thinking about on this topic. For all the extroverts out there in the world and all the bosses out there in the world, I personally think there's also work that we have to do to expand the scorecard by which we talk about success and the ways in which we help people who are more introverted teams succeed. So I'll share an example. When I was an early manager in consulting, I had this incredible team, and there was a woman from Latin America, possibly the smartest woman I had ever met, but English was not her first language, listened more than spoke, and had paralyzing anxiety when it got to our steering committee meetings. And I ended up doing a thing with her, which is every day at lunch for the week before the steering committee, I would rehearse her slides with her. Wow. And I said, this is not a question of whether or not you can do the work or whether or not you can speak up. This is just practice. Yeah. And she's now the senior vice president of merchandising at one of the world's leading retailers. And she often tells me, like, that mattered to me that you saw that I was not totally comfortable and you didn't underestimate me or pass me over. And I think there's another part of the story, which isn't about just people who fall into the quiet culture bucket, let's upskill. I think it's people who fit into the loud culture bucket. Are you doing the work to recognize good work? You know, so I'm just going to leave it at that because I feel like we have to do our part too as loud people.
Yes, Lisa, I'm so happy that you are bringing this to light. I just did a talk, a few months ago, and it was called like uncovering your hidden talent. And I really feel like a lot of quiet culture people are hidden talent. They are doing amazing work, but they're doing it quietly behind the scenes. And to your point, it does take people who are naturally more extroverted, naturally out there to recognize the hidden talent. And one other thing that I will say is it's also not assuming just because someone is quiet that they don't care. Just because someone is quiet, it doesn't mean they're not engaged or that they don't want to do it. It just might be the values that they were taught. I'm listening first, right? So I'm really happy that you are bringing that up because to your point, it does take both. It does take people who are more quiet culture to learn how to show up more confidently, but it also takes people who are more loud culture to recognize the quiet culture folks and give them the recognition too. So amazing.
Well, I hope I demonstrated that today by giving you all the airtime, Jessica.
Thank you.
Gold star for Lisa. Yay folder moment for me.
Forward that to whoever.
I'm going to put that on LinkedIn when this episode posts. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us on In Confidence. And everyone has to read your book. I've got, by the way, if you're watching some video, I've got like 8 pages of double-sided notes about your book, all the things. And I'm so happy we are new friends, and I look forward to continuing our friendship.
Oh my gosh. Well, this was so fun. Thanks so much for having me. And I look forward to talking with you again soon.
I'm so grateful to Jessica for coming on In Confidence and solving this problem with us. Each episode this season, I'm going to offer you a clear takeaway and a PDF. If you head to our website, gravitasnewyork.com, go to the podcast, click on the link for this episode, you'll get a one-pager that summarizes everything Jessica taught us today. And here's your power move of the week. Stay top of mind. That is one of my favorite takeaways from Jessica's insights. Jessica showed us that in her experience, being top of mind means that you're already at the table when opportunity comes. Your work is not going to speak just for itself. You have to be the one speaking for it. So just like her, making sure she raised her hand for Thunderbirds, that's the first step. But then making sure she talked about it all over the office so that her colleague didn't snag that opportunity from her. Consistently, strategically, and without apology, stay top of mind this week. So find one way to make yourself impossible to overlook and start there. Before we close, I want to build something into the season that matters to me. Growth deserves to be seen, ownership deserves to be named, and the people doing the work deserve to be celebrated. So at the end of each episode, we're going to recognize someone who's leading with gravitas. Today's shout out goes to Jessica Chen. Surprise, surprise, since she was our guest. I loved her book, Smart Not Loud, How to Get Noticed at Work for All the Right Reasons. We talked about it on this episode, but if you want to dive in deeper, I highly encourage you get a copy of this book. It will show you exactly how to get the recognition you deserve without changing who you are. We will link it in the show notes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of In Confidence. I hope you're leaving this space stronger than the way you entered it, that we solved a problem. Maybe share this episode with someone who needs to hear it today. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe to this podcast, because all of that helps us continue to amplify our work in the world. And until next time, in the words of my 9-year-old self, I see you, I value you, and I believe in you. This is In Confidence.